6:59, and we're about to get started with our Banter Blitz here for the Chess Club of Fairfield County. I'm very excited. Last time was a lot of fun. I'm going to be exhausted after 2 hours, so we're going to probably stop then. Let me see here and make sure everything is set up properly. We're just testing here. Got my tech team letting me know. All right, that everything's working. Okay, so let's get started. It's 7 o'clock. Very excited to be with everybody. All right, and I think the first person up is Henry. So if Henry, we're going to play some 5-minute with 3-second increment here. This was my last game, but everybody only wants to play 3-minute, unfortunately, which is not well suited to that. But this 5-3 is really good because you can actually play some decent moves. All right, there's Henry, and let's get started. All right, so Henry, I've gotten to know a little bit. Let's play the best by test move, and he is a very, very thoughtful young chess player and very talented. So we definitely have to focus. And I think we have a really tough lineup here. Knight c6. This was played in the 2018 World Championship match by none other than Magnus Carlsen. Played this almost every game. So, and Henry is following theory from that match. So he's up on the latest and greatest. And yeah, I think that he is very gifted young man, and also very well trained, I believe. And I know he receives his training at the chess club, and I can tell that it's very strong. Yeah, so maybe the rating makes it look like there's a big disparity, but in fact, I think that it's not. It's very dangerous, actually. Very dangerous player here. Okay, so let's try bishop to e3 first. The idea is that we're picking up a tempo by attacking the c5 pawn. I'm actually not sure. Maybe black could ignore that and play something like knight g4 anyway and sacrifice the pawn. Bishop takes pawn. Looks like white's pieces would be a little bit uncoordinated. Maybe there'd be something like queen a5, attacking my knight on c3. Okay, but he protects the pawn. And if he protects the pawn, well, I guess that probably makes a lot of sense too. Because now if I play queen d2, my hope was that I could play queen d2 and then not have to deal with knight g4. But I guess I do, so I should probably play h3, which I believe is what was played in the match, Caruana-Carlsen. But Caruana didn't play queen to d2, and I believe in game 2 maybe, he didn't play queen to d2, and it got him into a little bit of trouble. His plan was a little bit dubious, a little suspect. But anyway, white's idea should be queen d2, and then bishop to h6 to exchange the dark square bishops, because basically when black fianchettos his bishop, that's his most powerful piece, you can see that he has very good control over these dark squares in the center, in particular this d4 square. And so white obviously would like to trade off black's best piece. It's also defending his king. So he could have prevented that on the previous move by playing pawn to h6. But everything has pros and cons, then it's more difficult for him to castle. So, and I believe knight d7 here is one of the main moves, or maybe queen c7 intending e5. Somehow, I think we left the, knight d7 he plays. So you can see that he's playing, basically, as far as I know, he's playing like a world champion candidate, or actually, sorry, the world champion himself. And so, although I don't think Magnus allowed bishop to h6, so maybe something is a little bit okay, went a little bit well for white here. But more or less he's playing like a world champion, so yeah, definitely a very dangerous player. There's kind of a cheap kind of attack in these fianchetto positions with queen g5, queen h4, knight g5, and checkmate on h7, but it never works against people who know what they're doing or have enough time to figure it out, or so I don't know if I should try that. Queen g5, then you reposition to h4, you clear the square on g5 for the knight, and then you try to checkmate on h7. That takes like 4 moves, and you don't castle, and you just hope that they don't know what they're doing. So if we were playing a really fast blitz game, maybe I would try that. Um, but I tend not to play for tricks. Um, I don't really approach chess that way or appreciate that part of chess. Um, but of course, it is a part of chess, and a lot of people, that is their bread and butter. That's what they love to do. Traps and zaps. There used to be a book when I was growing up by Bruce Pandolfini, Traps and Zaps. And there were a lot of people, I think, who just like to execute their traps and zaps. Okay, I'm losing on time as usual. I'm just going to castle. Uh, and yeah, I think I have a pretty good position. I mean, basically, Black is supposed to have compensation for his damaged pawn structure because he has the bishop pair. Bishops control a lot more space than knights. The issue here is that he's going to lose one of his bishops. And you notice that most of my pawns are on white-colored squares. That's not a coincidence. That is to fight against the power of his bishop, right? So I can contest the squares and limit the bishop. Okay, so I don't really know about this approach from him because I think he wanted to put the knight into this d4 square. You should maneuver the knight there because that would cause white a lot of trouble. That knight would be very, very strong over there. But in this case, I think we can get into an endgame with an imbalance of knight versus bishop and better pawn structure. I mean, it's not, like something that it's not like winning or anything. It's just kind of pleasant. If you imagine that the black knight has reached the d4 square here, and I still have my knight on f3, that would be a bit annoying, because if I traded, he would improve his pawn structure considerably, and if I didn't trade, I would be having my c2 pawn under attack, and my knight on f3 under attack, and there'd be threats like knight takes knight, and bishop takes pawn on h3. So basically, he can just give me more trouble, I think, if he had done that maneuver. Okay, if I can get the queens off, then I think it can really... So let's do f4. f4 is saying, if you check me, I'm going to go queen f2 and trade queens, and if you don't check me, I'm going to attack you with f5. So basically, f4 is an attempt to trade the queens. And because in the endgame, the less pieces there are, the more the pawn structure should tell. Also, if he takes, I can consider taking with the king. It's probably a little early for that, but the king does belong in the center. Yeah, I'm going to take with the rook because I think it's just a touch early to put the king on e3, but definitely that was something to consider. I think the first official world champion, Wilhelm Steinitz, might have done that. He liked to bring his king up into the middle of the board, and he had a famous saying, "The king can defend itself." So, yeah, here I think Black's issue, I mean, objectively, I think his position is probably still okay, but I think his issue is just that it's hard to generate play. Yeah, you see that bishop on a6. He's trying to push c4 to get rid of his his doubled pawn. But you see now, when I put, this is a little principle in chess, when you put all your pawns on the same color as the person's bishop, you really limit the scope of that bishop. You see that bishop is having trouble finding useful employ, right? And yeah, so he's trying to liquidate his doubled pawns. But even if he goes c4, I can do b takes c4, and when he takes back, I can maybe push past him. He's going to get double isolated pawns. So it's not so easy. The other option is a4, and then if c4, I take, and he has to take with the bishop. I think I'm going to do that. Of course, I'm trying to induce him to push past me and go b4. Then his bishop would be really dead, and I would have that juicy c4 square. Yeah, you see, I think that's a pretty big positional concession, because now I can you see how dead this bishop is now? There's no pawn breaks for him. And so I can just eventually get my knight into that square over there, or at least keep eyeing that square. And now these doubled pawns, he never can push c4 because I would win a pawn for free. So I think basically we fixed the pawn structure, but we fixed it in a way that is not favorable. Right? When you have the bishop, you want to have the option of opening the position up, and not... So I just need to coordinate my pieces now, and I think that most of my pieces are probably going to end up on black squares, and my pawns are going to end up on white squares. You notice that? This way, if the pieces are on black squares, they're perfectly safe, And if the pawns are on white squares, they dominate the bishop. So, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, this is not like a. We don't have to be dogmatic about this. Obviously, I'm thinking about doubling rooks on the f file, and that would be a light square. But generally speaking, you can see a lot of my pawns are on white squares, all of them except for the f pawn. So essentially, this is textbook play. Now, the textbook isn't always right. You got to think for yourself in chess. But in general, we want to. I'm happy to see him fix his pawns. The more fixed they are on the wrong color, meaning, well, I shouldn't say. I mean, if they're on black colored squares, then he's going to have to defend them, not with his bishop. So he offers a draw. This is something that happens a lot. I think that lower rated players, when they get to an endgame, they think that maybe it's a draw because we're in the endgame. Or I know when I was that rating and I would play a master, I was just kind of nervous. So I would trade some pieces and then I would offer a draw. That was just for me, I can't speculate about other people, but for me, that was just because I was nervous and I thought, Now, when I was about 7, I played a simul. Let's improve the king now. Against the best women's player in all of history, Judith Polgar. There was a Polgar Chess Center in New York. And, let's go g4 first. And that's what I did. I prepared a opening line where I could trade a lot of pieces. And I traded a lot of pieces against her, and then I offered her a draw. And now what's going to happen is that I'm going to be able to open the H file for my rooks. And I offered her a draw, and she accepted the draw. And for many years, I went around believing that I had made a draw against Judith Polgar. Everyone else in the simul lost, I think. But I had made a draw. Okay, so he wants to get the pawn break. He wants to lock it up completely. We can't let him lock it up totally. So we have to break a little earlier than I wanted. So that was a good move on his part. That move, on the other hand, is a little passive. So I'm going to get my rooks over to this file. Those are the kind of things I think that if you're trying to get better at chess, you shouldn't do. I mean, I would have learned a lot more if I had played the position and got roundly beaten. But I think Judith was trying to, boost my self-esteem or whatever. And so she accepted a draw offer. Obviously, she could have outplayed me in the endgame. Okay, so now it's a question of just getting some squares for the pieces and making sure the pieces are ready for when these breaks happen. So let's see. There's a lot of ways to do this, but now I'm running out of time. Basically, I got to put something on the square h5, like a knight or a rook, and isolate one of his pawns. And I can also later sacrifice the knight and get some pawns rolling. So, I mean, the position is strategically and positionally winning, but if I make one tactical mistake, then I'll lose. So there's no doubt about that. You see now he has an isolated weak pawn on h6. Sometimes people make exchanges when they're just kind of running out of ideas. But anyway, one tactic is all it takes. It's like Rocky Balboa. He is the underdog against Apollo Creed and against everybody because, he didn't know how to box. I mean, he was a meat packer, something like that. But another draw offer. Yeah, it's okay. I'll take a draw. I mean, I'll accept it if I want it. Sometimes it take a lot of moves, but eventually we should find a way through. Might have to push g5 as a temporary sacrifice or guard the g5 square first. There was a Timon, I think, one of the famous old classical grandmasters said, you shouldn't rush. I mean, a lot of them said that, but you don't have to feel anxious that you're not winning right away. Now I'm threatening g5, and so he guards his rook. Nice, but you see he's going to, Zugzwang, he's going to run out of moves because he's got no space, because he either has to move a rook away or move his king, and then I have this move g5, and he won't be able to take. Okay, so he's going to try to do without it by moving his bishop. I can also threaten this pawn. Or I can go into the c4 square and into d6. Yeah, well now c4 is very inviting because... Okay, but we have to maneuver a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. We can bother him a little bit with a check maybe. At some point, I mean, it's one of these positions where you can't lose unless you make a horrible blunder, but you have to find the right breakthrough. And when you get better, when I was getting better at chess, it took me a while to realize that these positions, you just have to be patient. They are winning, but you can't rush them. And you don't have to feel anxious that you're not winning right away. Worst case scenario, I can go to c4 and take the d file. I might have to do that. Or I can push. Yeah. Well, the problem is that I'm in time pressure too. But he should have to give something at some moment. He'll have to yield. If I have to do it through the d file, then I'll come in this way. Because when I get to c4, he really has to take that and open the file for me. Now, he could go rook to d8, but yeah. All right, let's try it this way. This might not be the right way, but now my rook has an open file. Okay, so he's in time to. Very staunch play, it has to be said. Yeah, very staunch. It's not clear. Let's go here. I mean, he still has this weak h6 pawn. I can maneuver my king to h5, maybe trade some rooks, and then he can go rook d4. I didn't see that. He should have gone rook d4, because then I can't take, and he can build by doubling the rooks. If he goes into the pawn ending, I think that might be losing, because my king is going to get to the h4, h5 square. Okay, that's a good move, but I think that loses a pawn. So yeah, that's the kind of thing where, you don't need to, it's just small stuff sometimes, very close, but that's all you need. I mean, you have one weak pawn and you have no space, and so it just becomes difficult. Now, if I trade rooks, I'm not clear on what happens there, so I'll just take the pawn. All right, and now maybe guard it with the king, and so then I can try to take, oh, he has the file now. Yeah, he should have taken the file. Yeah, I'm not playing very accurately, but also I don't play that quickly. So he gets the pawn back, but his king is checkmated, or whatever it's called, caught on the corner. Now he loses his rook. Yeah, so that's gonna do it. Yeah, there's a lot of little details in these endgames. They're not. You can't just assume that they're gonna be a draw. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, I guess we want chess to be a little bit more complex than that. Is that stalemate? Not yet, right? Sometimes there are stalemate ideas with these kinds of positions. Now, just to say, if there was no increment, I definitely would have lost this game. I've been losing a lot of queen and king versus queen and king, and rook and king versus rook and king. Yeah, it's that's how it is. Good game. That was a really close game. Obviously, everyone can see that with your own two eyes. But I think White always had a little something. If we have time at the end, I'll try to play at least one game against everybody, of course, and then we'll see. But Henry's up first, so he might have time to get in that second game. Okay, next up is Mr. McCreesh. Let's see. I think his handle is Brent McCreesh. His handle is Brent _ McCreesh, which is a little bit more ingenious a little more clever than my handle, which is Dan Lowinger. But I like people who announce who they are. Or at least it doesn't have to be your username. So Brent, are you out there? I'm waiting for your challenge. It doesn't have to be your username, but I like people who show who they are, because some people, their behavior online is a little questionable, and at the very least, I think you should own up to it and tell us who you are if you're going to be doing some of the things that people do on the internet. All right, well, if Brent doesn't match me, I'll give Brent another 30 seconds or so. There he is, Brent McCreesh. Yeah, so you see he has this underscore, which I don't have. Oh, I got White again. How did that happen? All right, well, I'm a one-trick pony, so we're going to start with the same move. Yeah, I mean, obviously his real name is not Brent _ McCreesh. It's just Brent McCreesh. So, he's very nice. He wishes me good luck. You too. Okay, so I've been trying out this Tarrasch variation recently, so we'll stick with that. Yeah, this is a good line. So we take, and if he takes with the queen, which is the more popular, he takes with the pawn. Okay, so we're gonna have an isolated pawn structure, isolated queen pawn structure, which is very interesting. This happens in the Queen's Gambit Declined, and it happens in the French defense exchange variation, or Tarrasch, like this, where we exchange. I think that basically black is doing very well here, objectively. But white is okay too. So he doesn't want to move his bishop yet, I guess, because then I can take and make him move his bishop again. Since I'm going to take anyway, he would rather me do it now, and then he wouldn't have to move his bishop 2 times. You want to always go somewhere in 1 move instead of in 2 moves. You have the same position, but it's your turn. You're a move ahead. So that's called being a tempo up in chess. And the higher your level in chess goes, the more that matters. Imagine having 2 moves instead of 1 on a turn, right? So if he goes bishop here and then bishop here, after I take, instead of just me taking and going here in 1 move, he'd have the same position. His bishop ends up in the same place, but he has 1 extra move because his knight is out instead of having moved his bishop and then moved his bishop again. So now his knight is on f6 and it would have been on g8. Actually, the reason I'm belaboring this point is because it took me a long time to understand it. You might be thinking, like, that's so obvious. We all understand what a tempo is. We're not, total beginners here. But for me, I was 1800, 1900, like where Brent is, and I don't think I still didn't really understand what a tempo was in chess. So it is a very foundational concept, but a very important concept. Don't do in 2 moves what you can do in 1. But now, of course, if he wants to castle, he does need to move the bishop, and then he'll lose that tempo. That's, I think, just part of the theory, but he tried for a move to avoid it, so that makes sense. Okay, so he moves to e7. Now I take. I think he should take back, because if he doesn't, I can guard the pawn, and then I'm up a pawn. And he still has an isolated queen pawn, so yeah, he takes back, and then I keep mobilizing. Now, in these isolated queen pawns positions, the strategy is, approved from hundreds of years of chess accumulated wisdom, is that it's something Nimzovich said. First, blockade. Well, he had a 3-step process. I'm trying to remember what it was. But basically, you have to blockade the pawn, which means control the square in front of it so it doesn't ram itself down the board at you. Because notice, if this pawn keeps moving forward, right, then his pieces gain more territory to come and attack with. So it's like first blockade and then destroy was the last part. But there was 3 steps. I can't remember. But one of them was blockade, and then maybe it was like blockade and then like target it and then destroy it. Okay, usually I think they go bishop to d6 to try to point at my king. Bishop to b6, it's probably just as good. What do I know? Should we check with the queen or check with the rook? If we check with the queen, then the rook can come to d1. If we check with the rook, then that's kind of the more natural move. But then he has, eventually his knight. My f2 square is a little tender. So I'm thinking maybe checking with the queen is more appropriate. Or maybe it's not appropriate to check at all. Maybe I should go bishop g5, and then if he castles, take his knight, and then take his pawn, but then I lose this pawn over here on b2. Yeah, decisions, decisions, decisions. A lot of people, I think, would just make an instinct check here. Probably that is not the best overall approach to chess. You probably don't want to always just be giving a check with your instincts. Queen e2. Let me see. I got my phone is beeping here a lot, so. All right. Let's see. Queen e2. Let's say bishop e6. I can go knight to d4. Attack that bishop. He could sacrifice it for the f file. Yeah, I think rook e1 is just a little too loose because this f2 pawn is under supervision by his bishop, and so I think we don't want to leave that unprotected. So let's go queen e2 is more solid, I think. So we're going to do that. Of course, we have to develop our pieces and clear the back rank and connect our pieces, so it's a very natural move. Actually, another idea is to play bishop e3 and trade off his bishop, because this is, of course, his most dangerous piece. Of course, he could avoid that by going here. I don't think he should definitely not trade his dark square bishop. It's very important when you play chess to know some of the rudimentary sort of elements of the position. Of course, chess is all about the concrete and the tactics, but you should have a general sense of what you're aiming for. This is his bad bishop, the light square bishop, because it's on the same color as his pawn, so the pawn limits his ability to navigate through the center and limits the scope of his bishop. especially after I blockade it with c3 and put a knight on d4. But this bishop, of course, is bearing down at the king, and so we want a little bit of prophylactic thinking. This bishop is not so great, so we want to trade, of course, if we have the opportunity, all else being equal, which it rarely is, but all else being more or less equal, we should trade. Okay, knight e4 strikes me as a little bit premature, but because he hasn't, I mean, he could have developed a new piece with bishop to e6 and then castled. But, you know, what does that mean? That it strikes me as premature? It means pretty much nothing. All right, now I could play knight e5 and attack his knight, which is pinned, or I could play knight d4, which is where the knight kind of wants to go anyway. If I play knight on f to d4, then I make sure I don't get pinned by his bishop, and then I'm also threatening f3. And if I play f3, he can do bishop takes king. Actually, he can't do bishop takes king because my knight will be blocking his bishop. But of course, I weaken my king tremendously. So kind of a risky move. I think usually this knight wants to go here, but I don't want to end up in a pin with his bishop on g4. His pieces will be very active. Basically, if you have an isolated queen's pawn, your pawn structure is a little bit worse. So you're looking to compensate that by having very active pieces. I can also undermine the knight with c4. That looks kind of interesting. Maybe threatening c5. c4, if he castles, I take on d5. He takes with the queen. And I can't really use the fact that his queen is over there. I think he can just castle. All right, I got to move, so I'm going to move here. This might not be the right move. But, you know, there's also some... In Blitz chess, sometimes you just have to make threats and move quickly. If I had made this move much more quickly, then I probably would have been doing better because I could have used his time to think out some of this stuff. So obviously, having to banter through this is a little bit of a, handicap, obviously, because you want to just move very quickly when you have an instinct sometimes, and it's really hard to determine between certain candidate moves. But you gain a big lead on time when you move quickly, and that comes in handy down the stretch. So, yeah, but that's okay. I mean, that's what we're doing here. But just to say that if this was like a, if this was something huge on the line, then of course I would have moved that much more quickly and tried to gain a big advantage on time. Okay, so f3 is a threat, maybe, although I do open the line to my king, but if I get a knight for it, it's probably worth it, and because I can maintain this blockade on d4, I think is the idea with c3. So even though it looks scary to have the bishop looking at my king, as long as that knight sits on d4 and he can't get through that, it's like a roadblock, you know. There's great things on the other side of the tunnel, but if you can't get through the tunnel... Okay, so he castles. That's a pawn sacrifice. Very interesting. I can take his knight with my knight and then take... Yeah, probably I should do that. And then I'm going to have to try to neutralize his... I pre-move bishop takes pawn. And now it's important to try to trade pieces because he's got a lot of pieces firing at my king now. And I'm a little bit, behind because I took a pawn. So I have to try to trade bishops and trade some pieces and then say, okay, I've got this ending advantage. I can play c4, pawn takes c4, queen takes knight. That doesn't look that good. What can I do? Bishop e3, try to trade. Right now I have a loose piece. Then he goes bishop c7. He threatens to take on h2 and queen d6. Man, you see, when you have loose pieces and the other person has good development, it's very dangerous. You have to be very careful. Okay, so I'm going to play bishop e3 anyway. This is very risky, I have to say. Maybe I'm not going to... Maybe I should play bishop f4. Yeah, bishop f4. Not so much because I want the rook. It's more like I need to control this diagonal. Because if that bishop got here, then he would have been threatening queen d6 or bishop takes pawn and then queen d6. And this bishop on c6 is very loose. So that's why chess is very concrete. You can't just use these general considerations. But I complete my development with tempo, maybe, and rook to d1. Probably he should play bishop c7. Well, actually, he's forced to play bishop c7 if he does. But then I can take and take here. So somehow him moving knight to e4 without completing his development was problematic. Yeah, now I'm getting all of what I want because I'm trading with tempo. I'm removing the strong knight on, and now my king side is more or less secure. I can even play queen. No, we want to keep the bishop. But I have two extra pawns and my king is more or less safe. and I have a lead on time, so things are going well, except if I blunder, and of course the odds of that are, fairly significant. I mean, he's threatening bishop c4. I almost blundered that. Let's step out of, now how do we step out of that in a good way? Maybe here. Yeah, and try to trade, bully him a little bit with the queen trade. Gain some space, push his pieces back a little bit, and of course I blundered. So there you go. There it is. The move we've all been waiting for has happened. He can take the knight. It's getting really crazy. Maybe I should just, yeah, I should try it anyway. But he can do bishop takes knight, and then things are a little bit out of control. I probably still end up with a pawn. Yeah, he found it. So if I take the queen, he takes the queen. I take the rook, he takes, he's up a piece. So I have to take the rook first. Oh, maybe I'm just losing a piece here? What's going on here? I take the rook. Does that work? I might just be, I think I'm just losing a piece here. Yeah, so I blundered huge. Nice. So now I have to hustle, because now I'm just dead lost. Ooh, that's a really good move. Yeah, so basically, yeah, that was a great tactic, of course. Position was totally lost for him, but, who cares, right? It's all about the tactic. The one tactic to save them all. I'll probably activate my king here. Now, of course, we're trying to just hustle him. Don't really like being in this position, but, it's like that was the position that I sort of think it's fair, because it's like I was winning, and but yeah, should lose here for sure. But just trying, you always have to try your last chances, I guess. If that's how you do. So our last chance here is these pawns, and we got to try to make these pawns run. And yeah, that's what we've got going on right now. A lot of people here would offer a draw, like, beg for a draw, but yeah, it's not really a good thing to do, I don't think. It's just, it's just a losing position, so why pretend otherwise? Interesting. Very interesting. Basically, white is just fighting for a draw, of course. Let's go. Yeah. Advance. Advance. Yeah, somehow he's made it a little bit more difficult for himself, but obviously, obviously, we're just trying to make stalemate. He can't take the pawn, right? Because then I get a queen. I guess I could get a rook. I don't know why everyone always assumes. Okay, good game. I lost 8 points for that. All right, good job, Brent. Yeah, a lot of talking slows me down. All right, so who's next on my list? Very good game. Yeah, I don't know if I've even beaten Brent ever. He's basically got my number on this chess.com thing. All right, who is next is Jack. Jack is next. So that's Zeus 9393. Now this is interesting because it's not Zeus, the Greek god, whose daughter was Aphrodite and all that stuff. This is Zeus. Zeus, and now I finally get black. That's good. Zeus, yeah. Okay, he played my move. Oh, whoops, sorry about that. That probably messed things up. All right. So I'll copy him because I think he made a good move. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it. This is called the Italian game, and this is called the knight g5 variation. Fried liver, who knows? I guess good luck. Oh yeah, you too. Although, I don't really like saying good luck to people because I feel like it's not really a game of luck, and my luck tends to be bad because I'm not sort of trying to get lucky usually, um, and I don't really want my opponent to get lucky. I mean, if my opponent wins, because they, played better than me, um, then great. But I don't like it to come down to luck, so I always feel a little bit odd about saying good luck to people because I don't really want them to have good luck. I also felt odd about shaking everyone's hand before games, and it looks like that's going to be a tradition that gets revisited, just like we're not even having in-person tournaments anymore. So, um, anyway, the idea behind this pawn sacrifice in this opening is that Black has control of the center. He's going to expand with f5 and e4 and drive back White's pieces, which are underdeveloped. And basically, he's playing for the initiative. If that knight on a5 were somewhere else, like on, who knows, somewhere more centralized, then Black would have obvious full compensation, maybe more, for the pawn. But the reason this is a very interesting position is because Black is down a pawn, but Black has much better control of the center, more active squares for his pieces, more initiative, but he also has a terrible knight on a5. Yeah, and bishop f1 is anticipating knight f4, but of course, as you can see, White's development leaves something to be desired. But chess is very concrete, and so it doesn't matter. If I go f5 now, there's queen h5 check, by the way. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters except, the tactic that's going to come up and decide the whole game. And the less time I have, the more likely it is that I fall for that tactic. So that's basically, what it comes down to. But of course, the more time you have, which is why long chess is good, the less that matters. All right, so we need to basically castle, I think, and then play f5. So let's go bishop to e7 and just play it a little slow. Castles, and then f5, f4, f3, ram that f-pawn down the board. National Master Ian Harris style. Okay. So I don't think I have to worry about that trade because that would strengthen my center considerably. So I'll just keep going with my plan. f5, f4, f3 is in the air. So f5, f4, f3 would really damage his king side over there if he ever tries to castle, and gives me a lot of space to operate with, and basically drives his pieces, causes tremendous disarray in his army because his knight on e4 doesn't really have anywhere good to go, maybe g3, but then another tempo, f4 is tempo. He can get back to e4, but after f3, I think that pawn on f3 is a killer. And if he takes it, g takes f3, then I'll get a piece onto f3. Yeah, I think that that's the right plan. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to move a little bit more quickly since that seems to have a big impact on the result. Try not to fall too far behind on time here. And yeah. I think knight to g3 is more or less. Yeah, well, I guess he could. I was going to say he could do that, but that is. I guess he wants to go to c3, but now look at that center, and also this knight on a5 can come back now very quickly. So I think that that was definitely a not the correct move. But of course, doesn't matter. Nothing matters except for the big tactical denouement, the big tactical move. So, sometimes I wonder if people, like, instead of competing against each other all the time in these tournaments, like, if they kind of put their minds together, like the way we're trying to, like, create medicine or whatever. Like, put our minds together and try to solve this puzzle that's chess, because everybody's got like a piece of it, and then we could actually, be a very interesting thing. Okay, so like I said, White's development is yeah, he doesn't have a lot of pieces developed a lot, but like people just keep operating as if everything's fine, because it is until it's not. Yeah. I think now is a decent time to get this knight back into the game. The idea is we don't want to push our pawns. I mean, we want to push our pawns, but then we give him squares for his pieces. So the idea is let's leave the pawns there, and let's first he'll have to move some pieces out, and then once he moves the piece, like if he goes knight f3, then I can push e4 and I get a tempo. So it's like first commit your pieces somewhere, and then I'll go and I'll attack them with tempo, rather than first me flinging my pawns forward and then giving, like if I go f4, right, then he can maybe put his knight to f3. It's harder, it's a little looser. Well, I guess I could still go e4, but then he would have had knight to d4. So basically the idea is first control the squares, get my pieces to good places, and then you have to move your pieces anyway. You have to develop, and then right once you let me know where you're going, then I'll go and attack. Yeah, so like here, now I have a target. Now when I go f4, right, I'm threatening to take and open the f file from my rook, and that looks pretty good. I'm just trying to see if there's anything better. But, most people don't do that. Emanuel Lasker said if you see something good, you should look for something better. But usually that just kind of costs you some time, and then you just lose. So better to just move first and think later. That's modern chess. There was a book called Move First and Think Later, and I think that that's sort of the spirit of our age and the way people play chess now. And yeah, so whatever. I want to crash through on the f2 square before he castles. I'm trying to see if that's possible. f3 as a sacrifice is also interesting. He takes with the bishop. I can go bishop h3 and stop him from castling. He takes with the knight. I go e4 with a tempo. If only we could sit here and really work through some of these really interesting possibilities, but we can't. So we're just going to, like go on instinct, because that's what Blitz is for. Yeah, basically, everything he takes with, Black has to play energetically. Black has more space. Black has better development. That stuff all goes away if we let him, just castle comfortably. So we have to play energetically. Also, if knight takes, bishop g4 is a possibility, putting him in a pin. I guess he would go h3 and break the pin before I could play e4. H3, bishop h5, g4, and I don't think he's really weakened his kingside enough to justify me losing a tempo there. See, that's a tempo loss, because after my bishop moves away, he would just castle and he'd be very safe. So knight takes has to be answered by e4, I think. Oh, but of course we don't want to trade queens. That's annoying. So maybe I have to play bishop g4 and then h3, bishop takes knight, but it feels like we're losing the thread here. Losing the thread is probably what's happening. Can I go queen a5 check? Can I afford to play this without a queen? Maybe I can. All right, we're gonna do it. It might not be objectively right, but as we've said many times, nobody cares about that. So we want to take our time advantage, and we want to push him and make him feel anxious. That's what we're going for, because that's how Blitz chess is played. At least that's my understanding. Yeah. Just keep making threats, and yeah, but of course it looks like White has made it out of this, and he's not castled yet, but yeah, there's that, and 50 seconds. We got to do something to razzle dazzle. Probably sacrifice the exchange, right? Yeah, that's what the crowd wants, I think. The exchange sacrifice. We can also go bishop a6, but I think that. And yeah, basically it's like, still have a little bit of pressure. basically we're trying to, he should play c3, yeah, good move. Trying to create threats. Could. Let's see, rook e8, pawn takes knight, bishop b4. Is there any way for him to do, yeah, he could just defend it with the pawn. All right, so yeah, this is getting dangerous. But I mean, his king is still in the middle. He's got to be careful. His light squares are very weak. But so far he's playing quite accurately. He stopped me from going knight c5 to d3. And he's threatening bishop e3, consolidating. Well played. I guess we have to try to go into f3. But you see, the longer I take, the more he figures out what to do. Yeah. a5, a4 is a possibility. I guess we should try that. I displace his pieces and keep some threats alive. Some initiative. a4. So that when he castles queenside, we still want to keep some threats alive. And as the time ticks down, of course, that favors the side that's losing, which is me. Loosen his pawn structure a little bit, tickle the c pawn, the f pawn is a little bit tickled, king c2 steps into a light square, rook c8, c4, keeping a strong pawn structure, bishop f6, kind of looking at the knight now. Basically, it's all just a little bit of a hustle. But, you know, the knight has got the c3 square, wants to get the a2 pawn. Objectively, none of this is any good. But, you know, this is what it's about right now. Let's try this. If he gives me the two bishops, that's maybe a little something. Obviously, he doesn't agree. So, pawn structure doesn't matter anymore. Oh, very dangerous. Now I'm losing a bishop, maybe. I gotta have our rook able to go over here. And then rook g3 is met with this, I think. So I get a pawn, maybe. Probably still just losing. But do we have a choice? Maybe not. Losing on time, too. Basically just getting killed. Wow. Yeah, this is like a complete beatdown. It's threatening mate. Look at this. This is, no, he's not threatening mate. Sorry. That's not mate. I thought it was mate. Man. Sometimes there's some things are crazy, crazy. We gotta hide behind his pieces, because, yeah. Now he's got a lot of pawns, but I have a bishop. Bishops are good at controlling pawns, like really good, like disturbingly good. There's an interesting position like bishop against 3 passed pawns. It is all about moving fast and hoping. It's a little bit like hope chess. You know, these blitz scrambles, you just hope, will my opponent let me check and take, you know, like here if I give up the bishop, something like that, or it lets me check, and then I always tell my students, don't play hope chess, but then we encourage them to play blitz, so, you know. See how good the bishop is at controlling those pawns? The bishop is very good at controlling the pawns. Now he's going to go king b4, but then I have check with the rook. So Yeah. See, this is where I start wondering about that whole good luck thing. Remember how we were all talking about good luck for a while? It's like, is that really how we want this game to end? With luck? I don't know. I don't know, but I'll get the queen first, which means I get to give a check. And you know how important it is to give checks in chess. Chess is a game where you can give check. Like if we really were about the good luck here, then he would, right, like get lucky and win. Is that what we want? I don't know. It's not what I want. I don't want him to get too lucky here. So check. So check. Stalemate. You remember when I thought it was checkmate a few moves ago? I thought that was stalemate, but this is not stalemate. All right, good game. Yeah, crazy game. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, don't want it to be about luck. I think we should say more like, hope we play well before the game. All right, next up is Rohan FC. Now I don't know what FC stands for, but I'll give Rohan a minute to challenge me. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next person. But yeah, that was a crazy game, obviously. It was just nuts. You know, it's nice to have that increment. Okay, thank you, Rohan, for the challenge. All right, so I got white twice, and now I got black twice, and that's weird. Instead of alternating, maybe we'll have the same opening. Scotch opening, so a little different this time. Okay. Oh, I think I played this last time against him, and I didn't do well. Let's try something different. Let's take with this. Go to the end game. Yeah, there's a little rule that when you play the younger generation, whoever that is, there's a sort of stereotype or a truism in chess that you should play the end games because, you know, there's less tactics in the end games. And sometimes younger players get bored in the end games, or they just sort of lose their way, and aren't as fluent in those kinds of positions. So rook e8, rook d1 check, bishop d7, and then king c8. Maybe just bishop d7 right away. I try to lure him to play e5, and I go rook e8, and then he goes f4. I go h6, bishop h4, g5 takes, and then rook takes e5 check. Yeah, let's try that. So he goes e5, I go rook e8. He goes f4, I go h6, bishop h4, g5. If he takes on g5, I take on e5 with check, and then I take his g-pawn for free. Otherwise, he could just move bishop g3, but then my knight is not pinned anymore. So basically, we try to lure him into the big tactical move, e5. You know, the one that looks like it wins a knight. One good way of winning against players, of course, doesn't always work, but yeah, like he doesn't fall for it, but is to try to make them, you know, when you see what they want to do, you actually put in some work and try to see if you can make it not work for them, because very often, even in long chess, I find people go for it anyway. They're just very excited about some move. And now, which way does my king want to go to step out of this pin? It can go to c8 or it can go to e8. If I go to c8, I'm going to have to end up on b7, which is hard because if I go b6, he has bishop a6 check. e8 looks safer, but e8 also is harder to get out of there. No future there. Yeah, so I mean, basically, this position is not very good for me, but the advantage is that it's kind of new and interesting-ish, and it doesn't repeat the other thing from last time where I was not doing so well. All right, let's try this way. Bishop c4 is a little bit annoying, maybe. Bishop c4. Can I deal with that? I have to go. All right, let's just do it. Could be very bad. That's always in the cards. Basically, if I go here, he goes bishop a6, so I can't do that. So I'm going to have to go b5, which is not really what I want because my pawns lose a lot of flexibility that way. But I need to tuck my king on b7. Also, I need to do that without losing my bishop on d7. So it's kind of a sad situation here. But it does. There's nothing. I mean, basically, Black just needs to coordinate all of his pieces, and he has a lot of work to do that. But the positive thing is that it's clear what Black needs to do. We need to get our king off the back rank, and we need to put our bishop off d7. And once we do that, then of course we can fight for the d file, and I think have a pretty decent position. And it's not so easy for White to. That's the thing about it, is that even though it takes Black a lot of moves to kind of organize. Yeah, see, like moves like this seem a little bit. They seem a little bit premature to me. A little bit like you're trying to really, like prove something. And this is another reason why psychologically a lot of older generation players will play endgames against, because in the endgame you can't always necessarily just rush things. Like here I have the two bishops, and how are you, those doubled pawns, okay, but how are you going to access those? Now, like if I play bishop e6 and you take me, then you've straightened out my pawn structure already. And now I have a g file to operate with. On the other hand, if I play rook f8, I can, but I need to move this. The problem is I need to control the d7 square as well. So I think maybe let's try to be patient. He can double rooks. Yeah. Okay, this is the right move, I think. Takes. If he tries to double rooks, I go rook d8, I trade rooks. And then if we end up in an endgame where I have a bishop versus a knight, and my king is in the center, then I think I have a quite good position. So I think bishop takes f6 is one of those moves that it's very hard to put it all into words, but I get the feeling it's one of those moves that, the better you get, the less you're interested in it. Because you give up this bishop early, like that knight wasn't necessarily going anywhere. Yeah, he doesn't want to straighten my pawn structure, but now my bishop is well placed on e6, and I can work to improve my king. Do I want b6 or b5? I mean, rook g8, I can also play rook g8, but yeah, let's get our king into this nice nook over here, and then I can contest the d. Oh, whoa. Don't want that. Yeah, a little mouse slip is not what I need right now. Yeah, but anyway, king b7, and then rook over the d file, and you see these pawns are actually kind of inaccessible to him for the moment, and they give me files, and I can also try to trade them. So I think this sort of idea that, well, they're doubled and they're isolated. Okay, but yes, f4 is definitely a good move because you want to fix the pawns, which are weak. So that is absolutely the right way to try to exploit this. All right, now he can take the bishop and come into d7 if I do that, which I didn't really consider enough. I don't want to give him the 7th rank. So maybe I have to go bishop g4, but then, yeah, then the bishop is getting trapped over there on g4. So, I mean, yeah, it looks like, okay, looks like white is still doing very well, actually. Maybe I have to contest this file already. In which case, perhaps b6 was not necessary. Yeah, it's an interesting position. But yeah, I do think that, yeah, somehow bishop f6 didn't feel quite right. But of course, if you can exploit the pawns, I mean, the pawn structure is undoubtedly bad. But I have a bishop. I have a dark square bishop that you don't have, right? So not super crazy about that. So I think black should be okay, but black has to be very careful. Like, I almost just blundered the 7th rank. King b7 is a positional blunder, I think, because bishop takes bishop, straightens my pawn structure, but when the rook comes into d7, then I'm going to be in a world of hurt. Very passive. I'd have to defend all my pawns. There's no way to do that. He's got double rooks and get his rook, 2 rooks on the 7th probably. Would be very bad. So cannot play chess that passively. But yeah, this position I think is maybe tenable, more tenable. Check. If there's one thing I know, it's when I'm in check. That's not true. A lot of times I don't know when I'm in check. This bishop, although I once castled through check in a game against a 2400 level player, and nobody said anything. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know. And the game went on, and I don't remember. I might have won the game. And it was only when I got home and tried to put it in my chess-based analysis, it wouldn't let me. It kept beeping. Beep, beep. And I didn't understand. I literally could not fathom why it kept beeping at me. And then I realized that I was making an illegal move. And when I say "and then I realized," I mean quite a long time later. Do I trade rooks, or do I? I think I need the rook here actually to help coordinate, because that knight doesn't have a lot of good squares. You see my pawns, these doubled isolated pawns, they control all of these good squares. You see that? So actually, right, what it's doing is it's limiting the scope of the knight. And this bishop is going to have some nice squares to go to. I think I want to keep one of the rooks on. Otherwise, there's not enough to play for, I think. Maybe trade the rooks under better circumstances. Yeah, so he wants to go to f4, but then I have bishop d6. So I think we can allow that. And notice when he gets to f4, he can't go into d5 with check because of this doubled pawn. So the doubled pawns are in the center, right? So they're actually all of these center squares. This whole central box here is under my control, which is very annoying for the knight. Now this rook is quite active. I can attack the e pawn, the g pawn, the h pawn is a little tender. Like, how do you defend your you have to go rook d4, but then bishop c5, your rook starts to get quite passive. I can also play h5, h4, or I can play a little hope chess, play bishop c5. Yeah, why not? Bishop c5 with the threat of rook g4, and you can't defend your pawn. I mean, the bishop was loose on b4 anyway, so I'm not like, it's not a total cheapo. Oh, I guess he has knight f4, so that was stupid. But bishop e3 check, and then I take the knight. And also h5, h4 is a nice little pawn lever to weaken his structure and make one of those pawns target. Of course, I'm losing on time because I've been doing a lot of talking. Yeah, now I can do this. So I think now I have a pretty good position because basically my rook is just much better than his rook now. Yeah, maybe rook g4 was better, but we got to move a little quickly. So you're going to start to see some inaccuracies from me. This game is very interesting because every time I make my pawn structure better, like worse, I improve my position. Like, I improved his pawn structure, but I didn't let his rook penetrate. That was much more important to contain the activity of his rook. And now I need to do this. And that. And you see how my king is centralized and his is not centralized. Okay, now he's threatening f6, which would move my king and let his pawn go through. So it's very important not to miss that. I mean, the position should objectively be drawn, probably. But, oh, I didn't see that my pawn was hanging. That's very bad. Okay, so there's the blunder, and it could be the game right there. So that's how it goes. Another big blunder. And now I'm fighting for a draw, probably. Big blunder. And that's, very exciting. That's what people get excited about. The big blunder. But he does have to watch his king is still on the back. So, yeah, like now I'm threatening check and taking his rook. So maybe he lost the tempo. See, that's why tempo is important. His king should not be on c1. It should be on. If it was on c3, then things are very bad. But how does he stop rook f1 check and then pawn to h1? Yeah. Don't know. Looks like I might have. But, don't want to speak too soon. That's one thing I found. But now I have check and queen. So, yeah. I don't think this is going to do it. But I have been known to be wrong before. But yeah, I think this is just a little bit slow. Although people do get quite excited, I have to say, when their pawns are running down the board, but b4 is forced. Let's try. Let's try going from the back. Oh. Huh. Maybe this again? Yeah, this is getting a little bit hairy. These positions are, in fact, winning for black, but again, you have to do it right and not make mistakes. And this is a technical position, meaning you can memorize this. King there, yeah. My king is being boxed out, obviously, which is the problem. Yeah, I probably messed this up. I need to get his king removed. Yeah, that's not going to do it. All right, so he's going to get a draw. Oh, I don't know about that, though. Not sure about that one. Oof. This is getting really close. Yeah, I forgot about this move, though. Almost. Yeah, now I know what to do. Well, that was by the hair of the chinny chin chin. Something like that. Very good game, Rohan. Yeah, came down to... woo! Okay, next up is Nathaniel Moore, Raging Knight. Raging Knight. Man, why is everyone texting me all of a sudden during this? I mean, other people, not chess related. Okay, I'm going to give Raging Knight another 30 seconds or so to match me. Otherwise, we'll move on to Wood Pusher. Now, I may be wrong about this, but I think last time I played Raging Knight during the last Banter Blitz, and I talked a lot, and I think I didn't. Did I lose both games? Maybe I drew one of them. I don't know. But I definitely don't think I won. Maybe Wood Pusher was the one I didn't win against. But I think maybe both of them. All right, Raging Knight. Here we go. 5-3. Accept. All right, I should be... Nope, black again. 3 in a row. So it's very interesting how this happens. Okay. Knight F3. So a different move for each player. Play a Queen's Gambit declined. This is what I played against National Master Mikhail Koganov in the first game when I got blown off the board. But, of course, was objectively winning. But got blown off the board. So this is all theory. White is slightly better in this opening because white is always slightly better. E3. Okay, let's try this. Now maybe Queen C2, Rook C1, Bishop D3. Okay, Bishop D3. I think there was a Capablanca game from a long time ago that went like this. Kind of interesting. C5 maybe? Black is trying to contest the center, of course. Yeah, actually, maybe I should have taken on C4. Yeah, because... Yeah, I should have taken on C4, because that would have been that tempo, like in the other game I talked about. But then that's what happens. You move a little bit more quickly, and then your moves are not as accurate. Or you move a little bit more slowly, and then you just lose later to some tactic. Okay, so now I have to develop this bishop. The most natural move is b6, but then bishop e4 is a little awkward for me because my rook has to move, and then maybe knight b5, and this a pawn is weak. So the other option is to... That's why it would have been nice if his bishop was here, you see? So these little things, they matter. Maybe I can take on d4 and play knight f6, but yeah, black is worse. And black is clearly my position is a little bit worse. He has better development. He's going to get his rooks to the central. Oh, he took with the pawn. Ooh, I don't like that, because why should he give himself a... Yeah, I don't I don't like that. Probably white is still better, but that is not what I was expecting. Now can I play b6? Rook b8, knight, bishop b. Yeah, I mean he still has a lot of squares. Like he can come into here, he can go into here if I give him that square. So yeah, probably his position is still. But actually, I don't know. I might have to accept one weakness. Like if he plays knight e5, maybe I have to play knight c6 and just let him give me a weak pawn. But he has a weak pawn on d4. Yeah, so I'm don't think he needed to do this. Also, yeah. Somehow I feel like white is not as much better as he could be. Now I don't think this is the kind of opening where you're going to checkmate me, so I don't think that's really an appropriate move. So knight c6. I'm just trying to put my pieces in good places. Now if queen d3, I always have knight b4, so he might have to play a3. And basically once I develop this, I mean if I develop this bishop, then I'm at least equal. Basically black's problem is his development is worse. Yeah, so a3. And do I want to play? No, I don't. I want to play b6 right away. So the difference is that now he doesn't have the move bishop to e4, this square, because my knight is here. And he can play queen d3 and try to checkmate me, but I think that that's a distraction for him. Like, if you get focused on trying to checkmate me here, I think you're going to wind up, like, basically you're burning all your bridges. And you don't get checkmate, and then you haven't really put your pieces in the right places. And yeah, I think that could backfire for sure. Also, queen on d3 is a little loose. Like, I could play a5 and then put the bishop on a6. And, yeah, so rook e1. Okay, but bishop b7. Like, if I get developed, like, I don't, he could have been putting more pressure on me. Okay. But I'm not moving. But how are you going to get, so he wants to play knight e4, I guess, to get me to move the knight. But even that, I mean, I take and it's still my turn. Queen takes and then I guess I could go here. And then he goes b4 and then I go back. All right, we got to do this right. I mean, there's obviously a little bit of danger, but I don't think it's super serious. And I just need to get a smooth development scheme. Takes, g6, and then knight e5 maybe? How is he going to pursue the attack? He wants to go knight e4. I can stop knight e4 by moving my c6 knight. But then I give him that e5 square. But maybe I should just do that. And then play knight f5, rook d1. This is the kind of position that in a real game you would actually calculate and find the right move. But that's not what this is about. So now it's about, like, how can you find a move quickly? Not crazy about having them play g6, but maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe I'm not sure about this. Takes. Where are you going to move your queen? Because my queen has this nice square. All right, I'm going to play a little bit of a strange move. I just want my bishop to be defended. So now if knight e4, my idea is I'm going to take and play g6, and then my queen will have this nice square here. And I'll shore up my king side. I'm still putting pressure on this d4 pawn, and I'm going to have a tempo move with the knight. So his queen's going to have to leave right away from e4. So this is kind of my concept. There might be some fly in the ointment, but okay, so he just keeps building, but somehow I feel like if he doesn't get that move in, yeah. I mean, I could just voluntarily go g6, but then my h6 pawn is weak. Yeah. Huh. Okay, let's tuck this bishop out of the way. Maybe. It's kind of a waiting move. And then this rook can go to c8. That's the idea, is that I can improve. The rook doesn't have to be stuck on b8 anymore. Now, he could push d5, but I think if we liquidate, then my bishop is on a nice diagonal. I might be able to take this knight and give him bad pawn structure heading into the deep ending. So, and now I think the idea is that I just want to move this knight at some moment and reposition this rook to the c file. So basically, I'm trying to sort of get him to act. And so knight takes, g6. This might be his last chance to push d5, but that's very complicated because his queen would be in the line of fire. I mean, the thing is that structurally, yeah, that's a good move, stopping queen f6. So king g7 reintroduces the idea of queen f6. Yeah, basically the structure is better for black, and my bishop is better too. So if we get the queens off, basically his whole thing is that, you know, he's got an initiative because of his more active pieces, but most particularly because his queen is on the board. If he has no queen on the board, then black is doing very, very well. So if I can get queen to f6 and then sort of consolidate and continue to put pressure on the d pawn and move a rook to d8, and then also the queen would be pressuring the f3 knight along with the bishop. So basically, queen f6 is a really important move for me to get. And then, of course, I can maneuver this knight maybe to d5. Okay, so what is he doing? Is he threatening bishop takes or rook takes knight? Yeah, so this is why the queen needs to be here also, because he has all kinds of, he had sacrifices that he was trying to do. Rook takes pawn, queen takes g6, checkmate, that kind of thing. And this is also why we say against younger players, we try to play endings, is because they're very good at checkmating you in the middle game, but they're not always as good at endings. Now, when I say they're good at checkmating, I don't mean that's the wrong thing to do. I mean, obviously, a lot of positions, that's what you should do, even from an objective point of view. Knight d7 is a threat, so I either need to take that. Oh, I'm running out of time, but I don't want to make this too easy for him. Wow, he can sacrifice anyway. All right, I have to take this, I think, and then I have to, and I can't allow the rook to penetrate either. This is getting a little hairy. When Harry met Sally. Little Harry. All right, let's try to trade the queens. Let's desperately beg for a queen trade. I'm tempting him to take and then go rook d7, but I think I can hold the 7th rank with rook b7 and then bishop d5 to kind of block out his other rook. Maybe. Could be wrong about that, but yeah, he has to trade because I'm threatening mate on g2. Okay, and then that, yeah. Okay, now maybe I can get a tempo here with rook c8 and just at least find out where that bishop is going to go. Is that good for me or not? I can't tell. Yeah, the rook wants the file so that his other rook is not as useful. Now he's trying bishop takes pawn, so we have to go there, I think. Oh, maybe he can do bishop takes pawn anyway. Okay, so rook c8 was a blunder because he can take on e6 now. I don't know if that's... I mean, it's probably winning, yeah, actually. But it's not easily, I mean, it's not just like, you know, mate or anything. But I have 11 seconds, so I might stop talking a little bit and just try to play accurately a little bit, because I already blundered. This was a big blunder. He wouldn't have had this if I didn't put his bishop on b3. I wanted the open file for my rook, but I was going to say, the idea is he can't defend his rook with his rook because I've got checkmate on the back rank, but he's got bishop takes pawn on e6. And that guards his rook. That's the part that is really key, of course. So then if I take his rook, his bishop takes and he's safe and he's threatening e6. So I would go to the 2nd rank probably. But of course he just wins a pawn for free. So, and that's a key pawn because that's kind of consolidating my position. So obviously he should take bishop takes e6. Rook takes rook, bishop takes rook, rook c2. And then maybe b4 or something like that. And then I'd have to think again over there. But I'm down a pawn. I have to attack the a pawn, I guess. I basically just have to harass his queenside pawns there. And try to get one of them, but somehow, yeah, letting him get that e-pawn is going to be very bad, because then he can push e... Oh, he did that. I think that's... Oh, he can do it, because he can guard the back rank, right. But now I don't know that he's... Yeah, now I don't think he's winning anymore. My bishop becomes active, and my king can... Can my king centralize? Oh, we gotta move. I mean, now I think black is objectively out of danger. That's an interesting move. How do I get my king to be active? I don't know, so I'm just leaving it where it is. I have to know what happens if we get into a pawn ending, and I have no idea. So I don't know if I can trade, if I can afford to trade, which is, it's bad not to have that information. But I do have the better pawn structure. So, okay, so he obviously thinks he can't afford it, which is good news for me. Now, I don't know about this thing that he's doing. I'm just not sure, but I can't let his bishop get to e8, because then I would lose for sure. This pawn is very weak, obviously, so I can't allow that. Also, I might just run out of time. That's a very distinct possibility. My flag might just fall, and I wouldn't even notice it, but the computer would not let me keep playing. I have to keep his king and his bishop out, so that's not so easy, actually. My pawns are very vulnerable, but on the other hand, he has to be careful not to let my king get too active. And I have to be careful not to let him win my f7 pawn. So both of us have things to be careful about here. It's basically what it comes to. Okay, so this is going to happen. And now my king is threatening to get active. So he has to probably go back, and it might just be a repetition. But he probably doesn't want that because he has a million extra seconds, and it's all about, he has to be careful I don't check him and take his bishop if he makes the wrong move with his king. I mean, objectively, obviously, it's a draw, but there's still some things that we have to be careful about. And this one, I can go forward. I don't think he should be letting me forward, but it's not a big deal. I can go forward some more. I mean, the safe move was to just go back. That would have been a draw. But, we're playing for the fans here, and the fans want to see blood, right? It's probably just a draw anyway. The fans want to see blood. But maybe there's no blood that can be drawn. So, I mean, if I had more time, I would try to get my king behind enemy lines. At least I would try. But it looks like here there's not much a doing. If my king could be more active, of course, then that would be... Okay, so he is going to go for it. Kudos to him. That's a really good try, actually. Very nice. All right, we're just going to make sure that we have this in hand before it gets out of hand, because it is getting a little out of hand. Try not to lose on time. I definitely have lost a lot of positions like this on time. Oh, he doesn't want king versus king. He wants king and bishop versus king. Okay. All right, good game. Well, yeah, I mean, objectively, that opening is more or less, All right, here we go. That was a good game. Thank you for the game. And we've got Woodpusher 52 is next up. So this is my highest rated opponent so far. I think this is Nathaniel Moore. Plays a good move, e4. I think that's 4 blacks in a row for me. So am I still undefeated? Doesn't feel like that. I've lost a lot of rating, but all right, let's try this. Caden, okay. And I hope you have your mic off because the Evans Gambit. Okay, because otherwise you know everything I'm thinking. That would be significant advantage to the side that knows what I'm thinking. Okay, so I don't know why I played this move, because I just realized I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Which is bad, because in this kind of opening, if you don't know exactly what you're supposed to do, then you're going to lose. So basically what I'm saying is I'm in a lot of trouble here. A lot of trouble, because you have to know every move of these things. And I forgot that I don't usually play this particular move order. I move my bishop somewhere else usually. So now I'm having to make this up on the spot, which is not good. Not good. Not good. Basically, I think, though, that you have to allow bishop takes f7 check, which is scary. But if you try to be too defensive, then you end up with much worse problems. So like if he plays queen b3, I would have to allow the check on f7. But here I'm going to try to get developed a little bit. Maybe. So obviously it's the Evans Gambit. White has center and much better development at the cost of a pawn. And White is trying to, maybe send black's pieces into disarray and pick off some loose pieces, gain a lot of space. Bishop takes g7 and bishop takes rook, or queen b3 and bishop takes f7, or knight g5, and all those kind of moves are what White is trying to do, and it's very dangerous. And we don't want to step into any pins, of course. But I think the bishop on g5 is not so well placed because the knight wants that square. So basically what black is trying to do is, put White's pieces. So now I'm guarding the f7 square. It looks a little awkward to step in front of the bishop, but you have to play awkward moves because your position is already awkward and in a lot of danger. So I think the bishop on g5 is actually misplaced, which means I'm going to be a little safer. If he can't go queen b3 now because I have knight a5, which is a double attack on the queen and the bishop, also known as a toothpick. No. Spoon. Nope. Knife. Fork. That's it. Yeah. So if he goes queen b3, I have knight a5. So that's why queen d7 is important. It's the only square. I couldn't go to e7, obviously, because the bishop takes queen. So d7. And it looks like he's out of his book because he's thinking a lot. So makes a natural-looking move, develops his pieces, knight to c3. Okay, if I go h6, I get a tempo and prevent knight g5 later. But I kind of don't want to make his bishop go to a better place just yet. So what happens if I go knight e7? And then dream of castling. It's like Jiro, but Jiro dreams of sushi. I actually dream of sushi also. I sort of daydream of sushi. He's also threatening d5 and bishop b5, sort of. Or bishop b5 and then d5. So, yeah, anyway, getting back to Jiro. Jiro dreams of sushi, and I am dreaming of castling. Yeah, obviously the queen is awkward, but I mean, I'm still up a pawn. If I can get castled, I think his bishop should be on somewhere like b2 and bearing down on this g7 pawn. But I could be wrong. Like, who says I can't be wrong? But this knight, I think, would have been better placed on g5. That would have freed the queen to enter along this. So I think actually that bishop is really stepping on a lot of his plans. So he's going to have to find some way to sort of harmonize and make sense of that bishop. Dr. Siegbert Tarrasch from the 20th century said that one misplaced piece ruins your position, which is a bit of an exaggeration, but has a lot of truth to it. For the first time, there's a song by Jennifer Hudson maybe that starts that way. I was going to say, but for the first time, I seem to have a little bit of a time edge. Now somebody just came on Red Bandit. Is that something that I should notify the authorities of? I mean, that's an illegal occupation, right? So I don't know what the red refers to, though. Kind of a bandit is a red bandit. All right, so now the threat is transparent, meaning it's d5. And if I go a6, bishop a4, it's still d5. So like if I was on the ball, I would have prepared something for this move in advance instead of having to look at it now for the first time. All right, let's do that. Ooh, this is bad, actually, because no, this is really bad. I was going to say bishop a5, d5. Oh, I guess I can do that. Bishop a5. Do I play a6 first? I think I have to play this first, and then bishop a5, so I'm threatening b5, breaking the pin in one move. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been threatening to break the pin. And then he could have played d5, and he would have had a tempo, pawn takes knight, attacking my queen. So I have to break the pin. So yeah, it's a little petit combinaison, as Capablanca used to say. Not that I knew him or anything, but that's what he was reputed to have said. A little thing that I get a tempo on the knight, and then I can use that tempo to break the pin. If I had played this move right away without the inclusion of a6, then he pushes d5, I think. And then if I take the knight, he takes my... maybe that would have been okay too. I don't know. I can't calculate it anymore. Starting to get tired here. I have been playing a lot on chess.com since we're all stuck at home, and getting a lot of... getting sort of what they call dirty flagged quite a bit. So it's been a little bit tiring, a little fatiguing. But unfortunately, what I find is that when I get my rating up to like around this place, it's very sad, but nobody wants to play anything other than 3-minute chess. Like I can't get anybody to play me anything other than 3-minute chess, and literally nobody. Like literally nobody in the whole world and the whole internet wants to play. And so that, of course, does not favor me because, first of all, because I think a little bit more, but secondly, because I don't have a mouse, and there are people who can move at lightning speed. So, yeah, this pawn on c6 is still a little bit tender. Yeah, I was about to say, maybe, did I botch that? I have to go here now, right? Because I have to have my knight defending that pawn. Otherwise, bishop takes knight and bishop takes pawn was winning for white. But anyway, I have 7 pawns and he has 5, so there's a chance that I'm not completely dead. Positionally, of course, this is not desirable, but the extra pawns are extra pawns. All right, it's a tough position though. So in these kind of positions, you try to look for a way to give back some material. To improve your position. Yeah. Queen b3, huh? Castling long is suicide. Rook a7 looks very awkward, but this whole game has been awkward. If I go rook b8, I'm in a pin. Can't do that. Maybe I can go queen c8. Let's try it. This is what I mean by giving back some material. Like, the hope is that he takes on c6 and trades a million pieces, and then we go into an ending where I'm still up a pawn. But he has no more pieces left to exploit my weaknesses with. And the hope would be that the position would be roughly equal, and then you try to outplay the person in the ending. There might be some tactic connected with the fact that I'm in a pin. There might, like maybe if he takes with the rook first. Usually the big fancy moves are where you take with the piece you least expect. Okay, now just in principle, I don't think that that is too dangerous because he wants to use the pin, but if I go rook a7, I'm not in a pin. Okay, now I can castle, maybe? That would be a miracle. You remember when that was my dream? When Jiro was dreaming of sushi way back when, and I was dreaming, all right, I'm just going to do it. Let's make the dream come true. Let's, yeah, there's got to be a better expression than that. Check. Man, people and their checks. It's like, no wonder the president put his name on the check. Everybody loves their checks. Check, check, check. Checkity check. Actually, I can just move my king over, and then I have knight to g8. That would be a fun move to play. Guarding the f6 weakness. Or I could push f5. Or I could go knight g6, but then I'm inviting f4. Man, oh man. Decisions, decisions. This looks a little more solid. If he goes f4, I can go c5. He's threatening knight e7, winning on the spot. So we step out of this pin, maybe. But we're still on pins and needles. Just not just pins, but this time now they're needles. Pins and needles. The rook is under attack. So we go there. He's threatening checkmate, so we go here. These moves are not super difficult to find. He's threatening rook h3, followed by checkmate. So we can take on e4 and then go knight f8 and then let him do something really fancy. Or we can play lazy chess and go queen f8 and get rid of the queen before he checkmates me. But bishop e4, rook h3, knight f8, what does he do? Oh, he goes queen f6, checkmate. Okay, so we need to get rid of his queen. And the question is, are we just in time to defend? And if so, why didn't he calculate before going for this? Or does he just have like some forced checkmate? Like, is everyone's computer screaming, mate in 6, mate in 6? But you see, I don't like going all in and then thinking. You know, like now he's thinking, like, what about before you put all your pieces all over there? Right? Because now if you have to just retreat, if you have to beat a hasty retreat, then, all right, but I still have no time. I forgot about that. I have no time either, so there you go. But I'm trying to consolidate. Why is he moving so fast? It's annoying. All right, that's a tempo. I just used that for gaining time, and the e4 pawn is loose. Loosey-goosey. Oh, I'm happy to see that, of course. Reason being that without a queen, it's a little bit less likely that I'm going to get checkmated. Yeah, feels a little desperate now. Ooh, but my computer malfunctioned just now, so there is a good chance that if I have a computer malfunction, that would be a very nice gift for the white pieces. But now it's just a matter of consolidating and not making a big blunder. It's what we all are waiting for, the big blunder. This is why we play these positions. We want that big blunder. Come on, big blunder. Blunder me away. Down 5 or 6 pawns. But that blunder is on the horizon. Blunder of the century. The blunder to end all blunders. That kind of a blunder of the d pawn. All right, let's okay. We got to loosen this pawn grip over here. It's very annoying. Very annoying, I say. Oh, there's a blunder. Didn't even see that. There's another one. See? All is possible. All results still. Oh, that's a huge. I didn't see that one. Didn't see it. Step out of this pin. Look how fast he's moving. It's like another blunder. Oh, maybe that was not. That was a blunder, but maybe for the good guys. That's a check. Very annoying. Oh, that was a blunder. Oh, another blunder. All right, let's try to make use of this pawn somehow. He's moving so fast. I mean, very, very impressive. That's why he does very well on this format. Yeah, but objectively, black is doing well. There's some kind of trick that he's up for. He wants like me to push the pawn and then trade rooks and take. Then we have rook and king versus king, rook and. You know what I'm trying to say. Almost got flagged there, so that was good. There's still a good chance that I'll get flagged. Oh, there's a check. Whoa. Okay. Advantage black. 2 rooks against 1. So, yeah, see, there's still that check in the back there, so can definitely lose. For the first time in history. That's what the first time song was. Yeah. It's gonna start raining men. Let's go this way. And let's hide from his rook. The 2 rooks versus 1 ending I haven't studied recently. Maybe they're stalemate. Mad rook? Yeah. But it's not stalemate because he can still move. Alright, good game. Yeah, that increment, man. What a difference. Otherwise, for sure, I would have lost. Alright, so it looks like I made it through the first round of opponents. Definitely scathed, but alive. I don't think I lost the game yet, although almost blundered and got flagged. Ooh, Red Bandit. Now, okay, he wasn't on the list, but yeah, let's give him a try. Alright, so this is my erstwhile opponent, National Master Ian Harris. And, yeah, he having some trouble deciding on his first move, I guess. And he likes to play these lines with f5 if I play bishop b5. And then it becomes a memory contest because those lines are very, very forcing. But why not? Let's give it a try. It's always good to just make it about your memory. And bishop b5. Okay, so he plays a new variation. This is also kind of a memory thing because there are more and less. I mean, this is a very aggressive move. You're not supposed to have your bishop out on c5 in this opening. You're supposed to, in the Spanish, it's supposed to stop on e7. And so when you play bishop c5, it's very provocative. You provoke white into playing c3, d4. Wow. Yeah, so didn't I tell you he was going to play that f-pawn forward? And of course, because there's so much conflict and tension right off the bat, it lends itself very well to memorization. So basically, the strategy of players who play this way is they know that these openings are not good, but they rotate these openings and hope that you've forgotten what to do. That's my take on it. And you see everything is under attack, and so if you put this on a computer, the computer will for sure say like plus 1 point or 2 points for white, which means that black is losing. But if you don't remember what to do, then it doesn't matter. So it's like that thing where you're just like, okay, I have a bad position, but I don't care. I don't care because white has to do it right. And that means white has to remember what to do. I'm trying to wonder if I take his knight and take on e5. I mean, bishop d6. Yeah. All right. I think I could be wrong, but I think this is a way to go. You can see black has a lot of weaknesses in his position, like all these squares, f7, e6. And also, usually when you play this way, you know what you're doing, because this is like your thing. You have a kind of kaleidoscope of strange openings, and you can play very quickly, that means. And your opponent, of course, is trying to remember and scratch his head and figure it out. Structurally, white is better. This e-pawn is also very weak. The light squares are very weak. So basically, black's position, objectively, is losing. It's very bad. So many weaknesses here and a weak pawn over here. But because of the open lines, there's a lot of potential tactics. And so, it's good for Blitz, I guess, because if you make one wrong step with white, then you're going to be in trouble. Of course, black is going to try to loosen the white grip on the position. Yeah. So queen h5 check would not be good because of knight takes queen. If queen h5 on the previous move, g6, knight g6, knight f6, and the queen is and knight are both under attack. Although, oh yeah, maybe that was good because queen h. No, I don't know. Maybe that wasn't so good. So probably the most natural move is just to castle, but of course castles. Then he castles. Does he have a threat here? Queen b3 and queen e7 maybe. And the question is, does the queen? And then it's going to get kicked with bishop e6. So let's go castles. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely had this opening before and have looked at it, and there's no question that if you play the right moves, then you're just winning. I mean, it's literally you're just winning the game. You're winning material and so forth, and players over 2,000 or so can convert those. So it's really you're just hoping that your opponent is kind of forgotten. It's important, like I said, to have a few of these openings. You can't. This is not an opening you can play repeatedly because if people know you're always going to play this, then okay. So queen b3 check is not as good as it looks. I don't think. The bishop on f4 is a little loose. Can he use that? If I play knight d2, can he move somewhere? He can go knight g4, I guess. And then bishop g3. And then knight takes knight. Or maybe just bishop g4. But then I always have queen b3. I can go bishop g3 as a prophylactic move, but I don't like doing that if I don't have to. So I should probably develop knight d2. And also, another typical thing you'll see is that like he's up 2 full minutes on the clock, right? So I mean, from that perspective, Black's opening has been a success. So far, he hasn't lost any material. His position's a little dubious, but his king is not as safe as mine, and I have a great outpost on e5 for my knight. He has a weak pawn on e4, but he has 2 extra minutes and a lot of tactics, like his rook is looking at my bishop. So, that's kind of the Black strategy as far as I understand it. I could be completely wrong about all this. By the way, Timur Rajabov, Grandmaster, was one of the great players of the 2000s, I think, and made the candidates and then withdrew before they canceled it midway because of COVID. Big controversy in the chess world. He used to like to play these f5 moves against the Spanish. So if you study these Jainish Schliemann systems, you look in the database, you'll see a lot of Rajabov games. Timur Rajabov, very good player, but played some dubious openings like this, and also the King's Indian, which is increasingly dubious, and I can say that because I'm a former King's Indian addict. So this move, Black is trying to loosen the grip on the outpost on e5. It's interesting that he never cares about queen to b3 check. I can also go bishop to g5. Queen b3 check, king h8, knight f7 takes. No, my bishop is hanging on f4, sorry. So bishop g5 looks like a good move. With bishop e6, then I have 2 threats. I have queen b3, but I'm also letting him have this tactic on h2 in some lines. Yeah, that's the thing about it. But I have to move. I could just play very simply with like knight to c4 also, or just a lot of candidate moves, which makes it difficult. My most solid move, of course, is just bishop g3. But then he takes and he pushes his other c-pawn. All right, I'm going to try to just be solid here, but I think bishop g5 might be the right move. Yeah, I'm just going to play for the outpost, but could be yeah, now he's going to try to completely undermine this outpost. But I don't know that he ever totally can do that. But I could be totally wrong. By the way, he also has the bishop pair, I should mention. So, like, if white does not play incisively, and I am not playing incisively, I like how he always kind of jumps in at the end of these sessions. It's sort of an interesting tactic as well. right when I'm sort of fading out here. Yeah, so that prevents queen to b3 check. All right. Now we have to try to maybe rook e1. It's a little risky because, all right, stop beeping at me, please, because beeping and beeping, and I'm trying to focus with like no time on the clock here. All right, so rook c1, bishop a2. All right, so now I'm basically just on autopilot because I was trying to figure this out. White position is still better, but feels like I didn't get as much out of this as I could have, for sure. But he still has a lot of loose. But his light square bishop does a good job of now of controlling some of those squares. All right, and he's trying to blitz me, of course. This makes a lot of sense. Oh, I wanted that square for my knight. Ugh, yeah. Probably going to lose now, which is a little sad. A little sad. But I don't like losing to these kinds of openings, but of course it's not really under my control all the time, especially when I'm tired. This b5, it's such a weakening move. Look at that c5 square. So, but it's like, yeah, of course, makes the person think, and then they have less time than they did before they started thinking. But the position is objectively very suspect for black. All these c5 square, e6 square, all these weak squares, and but that bishop on d5 is, is like his key piece holding everything together as much as he can. If I can get rid of that, then I'll be in very good shape. Okay, so let's come into this other weak square on c5. Rook c1, knight c5. I mean, objectively, white is doing very well. But all it takes is one mistake, and I have no time. So it's just a very dangerous situation for white right now. Of course, if he starts using time, I mean, he still has a huge time edge, but, see that knight on e5, that's why this opening, I mean, if you're wondering, like, why is this opening not really so good, it's because of that knight on e5. You should not be letting that happen. Let's come in here. Bishop a2, maybe he can play and win a pawn. But that's very risky, of course. Because even if I sack a pawn, if my queen comes to b3, that's very dangerous. Okay. So I need to move instantly, of course. Let's just try to stabilize, or temporize is the word, maybe. Temporize? Stabilize and temporize. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to stabilize and temporize. Not run out of time. Not run out of time. That's a blunder, maybe? Do I lose my knight now? Okay, that move is literally just, I'm trying to make a move without running out of time. Somebody's going to have to break this deadlock at some point. Probably it's going to have to be me for the fans. Yeah, I don't see how to break it, though. He broke it. Okay. So he made a sacrifice in order to break the deadlock, but objectively it's no good. But, that's not what we're... Oh, there it is. That's what we've all been waiting for. That's the game. Yeah. All right, so that's what it's all about. That's how it's done, guys. Good game. Yeah. That's what we're all waiting for. Okay, so we've got time for one more game. I got Henry is up first. Here we go. All right. So the first loss at the end of the end of a long, hot evening here. We get the F5 Janish. So that's what it's all about. All right. We got another Spanish. This time I'm on the black side. Yeah. So some of it is about picking your timing. You see when people are at their most vulnerable, and that's when we want to play against them. We don't want to play them when they're strong. Um, here we go. I I have a couple of players that I've been playing online fairly regularly, just because we're kind of in the same rating range and we run into each other a lot. And you notice that, like, when we start playing, if they win the first two or three and sort of get on a roll and are in the zone, then we end up playing like 10 or 11 games. And usually, sometimes I'll just have a terrible day and I'll go 0 for 10 or something. Usually that's the first time we play, and it's like a 3-minute game, and I get flagged a lot. But what I notice is a lot of times those players, if I'll win the first two or so, then that's it. They'll leave. So they're happy to play a long time when they're sort of on their game, but not so happy when they're off their game. And so that is, that's part of the strategy too. If you want to be successful, is sort of picking your moments. Now, it depends what your sort of goals are. I mean, one good thing about playing online blitz chess is that you can, if you're studying and you're trying to learn a new system, you can repeat the patterns and kind of get fluent with them. That's a very good use of the online blitz. So, I think actually Nakamura said this recently in an interview, and everyone knows Nakamura. If you go to the list of top players, on chess.com, it's always Nakamura. And he said something like, he was talking about people who just play him for a draw, because his rating is like 3250 sometimes, or 3200 on this thing, and so he's basically at least 100 points over the next person. And so some people, will play him, and they literally will just try to get a draw and take like 6 points away from him at a time. And he was, and I guess somebody asked him, like, how do you feel about that? And he said, and he has pretty strong feelings about things, and he said that he doesn't have any respect for people like that. And but the point I was bringing up is what he suggested that people use the blitz chess for is as a means of improvement. He said that's why we play blitz online, is to get better at chess. And if you do that, then you really want to, you want to play when you're feeling good, but also you want to be able to develop your skills when you're not playing as well, because inevitably, when you play chess, you're not always going to be on your top form, and also your opponents are not always going to be in their worst form. So, it's actually, you learn more when you challenge yourself and you play people who are sort of on form and playing well. And, when you see that somebody loses 3 or 4 games in a row, and maybe they're losing because they're just making terrible blunders, and I'm not just talking about me, I see this actually a lot on chess.com, just, from players. It's like, there's a sort of like vulture culture, sort of like picking around the carcass. You see somebody is off their game, and for whatever reason they're making mouse slips or they're disconnecting, and then you just, zero in on that person. And I think that, that's something that is not going to make you better at chess. So then there are some very wonderful people, I have to say, some very, very nice people. Like I had an opponent, she's a WGM, and we were playing many games against each other. Okay, I think I can just take this pawn on d3 now. Maybe I'm wrong. And we were having a long session. We played like 15, 20 games against each other, a couple hours of chess. And, it was like we were learning a lot. We were playing the systems and getting better at them and making nuanced adjustments. And then, there was one game where I had it was like a queen and a rook against a king or something, or, at the end. But I only had 1 second left. So I offered a draw, and she took it, And it's like, Yeah, I think that that's a nice. I mean, nobody. It's not a judging, but it's kind of like it's nice. There's all different kinds of people in the world, in the chess world. It's nice that there are people like that. Is all I'm going to say as well. That not because you can play and you don't have to feel like that you have to like. You see, like I'm playing with my hand. I don't know if you guys can see. Like my hand actually starts to get sore after a while. Like my fingers and joint. And it's like they're nice that there are people who, like actually, will take that into account. Um, so I don't understand why we're trading pieces if I'm up material. That's what I'm trying to figure out here. I can take, if rook takes, then I can just move the bishop out of the way, I think. I'm not hanging my e5 pawn. So I think this is okay. Yeah. Okay, let's go. Yeah, so there are definitely some very nice people as well. And that's not to say that of course, that you know people who flag you with you know rook and king versus rook and king or whatever are not nice people. Um, but it's just nice that there are other options out there as well. So sometimes if I see, like if I have a friends list and I'll see some players on, and I know that there's somebody who we can play, um, you know, without having to worry about that kind of thing. That's nice. Actually, I'm not a big fan of the rook and king versus rook and king thing, and it happens to me surprisingly frequently. I do wonder why they can't you know, have the. I guess they can't, right? They can't make that a. They can't make that into a draw. You can't call a draw. I guess, right? Is that the idea? All right, so just make a natural move here. Put myself into a pin. Now, if my e pawn gets distracted, then rook takes e8. I can blunder back rank checkmate. So you just have to make sure that we create the conditions so that a blunder is possible. Otherwise, I'm just kidding, of course. We have to defend our e pawn and bring the rook to the center. Yeah, that's a good move. Knight to h4. Knight's on the rim is a good move because the knight wants to come into the f5 square, which is a powerful square, and it's blotting out my bishop. So the only drawback to that move that I can see is that I can infiltrate on this second rank. So we're going to try to do that while we can. And it's 9:02, so this is going to be the last game. And okay, thank you. I got the message about how to wrap up, so I appreciate that. Oh, I wouldn't be putting down my kids. Maybe if I had a sick dog. Of course, talking to somebody that most people don't know what I'm talking about. So it sounds like I'm just kind of nutty, which I am. Believe me, these sessions, when you have to talk through everything, it's a little fatiguing. But it's also a lot of fun, and I really appreciate all of the people who signed up, and I hope that you guys felt that you got a good game and that you enjoyed. There were a lot of really close, really interesting games. By the way, if anybody wants to play more with me, just in general, if you see me on chess.com, I'm happy to play. I like to play unrated games because I'm just trying to like lower the intensity a little bit when I'm playing on chess.com. I'm not trying to, especially if we're going to play, a time control that lends itself to. I mean, because as I was saying, I don't have a mouse, And so I'm sort of moving my fingers around, which feels a little silly. But yeah, I'm kind of more interested in the chess piece of it, like rather than the time scramble piece of it. So, but I'm happy to play more, just if certain those kind of conditions can be met. All right, I'm going to lose that e pawn, I think. So we're going to try to get something for it because I'm in a pin. Remember that pin I mentioned about the back rank? So there's f4 now is probably a good move, and although I was going to say f4, that's this move, because I can't take it. But then yeah, no, it's probably a good move. That's also okay. But now I can get out of the pin. Yeah, I'm threatening checkmate. Rook takes rook and rook d1 checkmate. So, and yeah, so he defends against that, but now I can add extra support maybe to my pawn. Okay, I'm also down to 7 seconds, which I kind of forgot about. So, yeah, let's try to trade off pieces maybe. King takes is a good move. Guarding the entry squares. Then I can push e4 maybe. No, that's risky. I guess I would just have to bet my king in. Yeah. And basically, black is up a pawn. There's no compensation on the chessboard for the pawn. But as usual, I'm struggling with the clock. So, okay. Take that. Passed pawn. Protected passed pawn, as they say. PPP. It's like the Paycheck Protection Program, except it's the Protected Passed Pawn Program. Yeah, try saying that 4 times fast. See, if you didn't put your kids down, you could have them say Protected Passed Pawn Program 4 times fast. But now that chance is gone, and so there you go. There you go. Protected passed pawn. We don't want to give him an open file, of course. So he closed the position with b4. He's desperate for an open file, so he makes a very nice move. And I have to do this very quickly now. In the time it takes him to get my c-pawn, I'm going to get his d-pawn if he trades rooks. So he can't trade, but now I have time to consolidate on block with my king on d6, and then round up that pawn this way. So essentially he's going to be 2 pawns down now. And as they used to say, 2 pawns is too much. 2 pawns, too much. Too much. That first 2 in the too much saying is, now we always try to gain time by repeating. Remember I was saying that? But my computer is slow, so instead of gaining time, I lost time. But that too much thing, that first 2 is a number 2. And then the second 2 is the TOO. TWO, TOO. Yeah. The TWO. Yeah. Okay, I can force a trade of rooks with rook c3, which is the easiest way to win. Probably, but just to be totally... sometimes it's hard actually to tell. Yeah, sorry, I'm not gonna do a draw here, but why would we... even if if I take the draw, it doesn't... I guess you get some rating points, but... oh, maybe it's stalemate. It was almost stalemate because the king can't move. I don't really get what the... Alright. But now his rook is active, but we can trade it. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, that's the rook for free. Okay. Yeah, those endgames, it's very important not to take them for granted. Oh, we're still playing. Yeah. Yeah, that's another way that I have lost games like that too, where I assume the opponent was not playing the game anymore. That's a very bad thing to assume. I've actually done that before. I've just sat there and had my time run out when I'm like one move away from checkmate. So there are many ways to lose a chess game, and I have found most of them. I think I have found a good number of them. I think people would be impressed if they knew my record on ways to lose a chess game. Okay, now I am pre-programmed to get a queen, so unfortunately I would think about another piece in some circumstances, but this one is going to pre-move queen. All right, it was a good game. The end game was close, but the end game play is very important. I was able to use my extra pawn, gain space. It's very important to be able to gain space in the end game and create squares and entry points. Thank you everybody very much. Very good game. We had one ringer in there. He was a bandit, and indeed, he was well named. He stole a point. Stole a point. Just like that, from under my thumb. Everyone else came very close. Some good games, some good draws. Thank you very much. And see you next time.